been exactly 3 years since the siege of the U.S. Capitol on the day Congress was to certify the 2020 election results. On Friday, President Biden delivered his first campaign speech of the year and called the events of January 6th the moment when we nearly lost America. He framed his potential race against Donald Trump as a battle for the future of American democracy. The riot began with the outgoing president speaking to supporters at the White House and imploring them to march to the Capitol. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us from our Washington newsroom with the lives that were changed that day and the fears about what lies ahead. Scott, good morning.
Jeff, good morning to you. More than 1,200 Americans have been charged for their roles in the attack. And even as time passes, the anger, the divisions, and some of the injuries still remain.
3 years to the day, Thomas Lloyd can't shake the images.
It's just how it came out of nowhere.
Of the chaos and the carnage. After more than 30 years with U.S. Capitol Police, Lloyd says that one day haunts him.
Just the pure brutality of what they went through.
A sea of rioters swarmed the hundreds of officers trying to protect the Capitol.
You're completely outnumbered. By the end of the day, it was tens of thousands against hundreds of officers.
Some beat police with poles, bats, sticks, stolen police shields, chemical spray, or their bare hands. Some called police traitors or chanted "Hang Mike Pence" or rifled through the office of Nancy Pelosi. Lloyd remembers how the mob confronted a lone officer outside the Senate chamber as the vice president and senators escaped. The police lines on the east and west fronts each collapsed.
You never forget that.
This still hangs on you.
Oh, yeah, every day.
In the U.S. House chamber, officers were overrun before everyone was evacuated.
They came 10 seconds from getting to us.
Norma Torres, Dan Kildee, and Pramila Jayapal were among a group of House members trapped in the upper level of the chamber.
I remember just being on the floor, unable to move because I'd had knee surgery.
Everybody stay down, get down.
And I thought this was it.
You think they would have come for you? They would have taken you?
They were for sure.
They were looking for us.
Members of the trapped group have since organized a support group, exchanging regular text messages, and the Democrats among them in the chamber acknowledge they're working through a trauma.
The moments that I can't erase from my mind are not so much people banging on the door or this fear of being attacked, but taking my phone and calling my wife and having the conversation that we always hear about. I told her, I'm fine. We were not fine.
So you downplayed this.
We were like hiding underneath chairs with people banging on the door. I got my camera out and started shooting video. And on that video, I catch the sound of the gunshot going off.
Yeah.
I think we all had a sense that there's never just one gunshot.
But it was a single shot fired by police that struck Ashley Babbitt, stopping the surge. Over the course of 3 years, the Department of Justice has arrested nearly 1,200 people, securing guilty pleas for more than half of them so far.
This is not only the largest DOJ criminal investigation ever, it's probably the most successful, too.
Scott Fredrickson is a former Justice Department prosecutor.
They have pretty much a perfect record so far in all of their prosecutions. That's pretty stunning.
Sometimes assisted by tips, including from the son of Guy Reffitt of Texas, who turned in his father and testified at his trial, the first of all the rioters. Accused of rushing toward police, encouraging rioters forward with his megaphone, and later messaging, "We took the capital of the United States of America, and we will do it again." Reffitt was also the first to be convicted by a jury. 3 years later, Reffitt remains behind bars.
We do a lot of FaceTime. And
his wife, Nicole, remains in Washington, attending court hearings each day.
Y'all make this vigil happen?
And along with Ashley Babbitt's mother, leads a vigil in support of the January 6 defendants for more than 500 straight nights.
What's the goal of doing this thing outside of jail each night?
The real goal is to give these people a voice and a platform and to show solidarity.
I just love getting letters from people.
In jailhouse calls pumped over the loudspeakers, some January 6 defendants argue they're the victims of overzealous prosecutors, with thousands of viewers watching online streams. Some talk about the prospects of future pardons being openly suggested by Donald Trump if he were to retake office.
I watch a lot of defense lawyers argue that the January 6 defendants think they were sent here by Trump, and that Trump is to blame for this.
I think people have to account for their own actions. One man can't do that. My daughter has a very different opinion of that.
She said it outside the court that day.
Yes, she
said it powerfully, that This is Trump.
Trump deserves life in prison if my father's in prison for this long.
That was how she feels. And I respect her feelings on that.
It's not how you feel.
It is not how I feel.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Yet Donald Trump is scheduled to stand trial for events related to January 6th as early as this spring at this same federal courthouse.
Well, he's a Jan 6er. He's an official Jan 6er.
And on the 2024 campaign trail, Trump continues to stoke the fires of January 6th.
I don't call them prisoners, I call them hostages.
Republicans in Congress have echoed his claims.
All you hear about is a 3-hour riot on one single day, January 6, 2021.
Some toured the jail last year and met with riot defendants or dropped by to join that nightly vigil outside. House Speaker Mike Johnson announced plans in November to post 44,000 hours of January 6 surveillance video.
House Republicans trust the American people to draw their own conclusions.
We relive it every single day with the actions and the words of our colleagues. So it is a triggering moment every time there is a denial.
In exactly 1 year, Congress will reconvene to certify the winner of the next presidential election.
Do you all think about January 6, 2025 much?
Yeah.
What do you think's at stake or possible that day?
Everything. I mean, all of this could happen again. And so that is the work that we have of preserving our democracy.
This is where the mob gathered.
Yes.
For Thomas Lloyd, there's hope and inspiration for what happened 3 years ago tomorrow, January 7th, 2021, in comparison to the nation's darkest of days.
You know, there were many battles in the Civil War, and if one particular side got truly beaten, there was a big act of desertion. And that was my biggest fear coming back the next day, that, you know, a lot of people would just not show up for work. But when I got the roll call and they all showed up, it was just unbelievable.
What did that tell you?
Oh, it just showed they were not going to give up. You never give up.
The U.S. Justice Department says it's still seeking to arrest at least 80 more people for their roles in the attack. And 3 years later, they've yet to find the person who placed pipe bombs on Capitol Hill ahead of January 6th, which means the largest criminal probe in U.S. history will still grow larger.
And Scott, and the prosecutor in your piece saying that this is the largest and most successful DOJ prosecution ever. I thought that was pretty striking. Scott, you're there every day. You mentioned the lopsided numbers on January 6th. Tens of thousands of protesters and only hundreds of police officers. What has changed there since?
The police have rebuilt the force. They lost some people after January 6th to retirements and resignations. They have done some successful recruiting to have a robust force, and they have also the oversight of congressional leaders to ensure that everybody's ready for the next potential threat and that intelligence is shared better. But I got to tell you, Jeff, one of the things that stands out, having been to hundreds of January 6 court hearings, is the sentencing hearings, when the defendants ask for mercy and ask for leniency. Some are tearful, some are apologetic, some are just simply defiant and still believe the election was rigged. And there was this one moment where a Proud Boy was sentenced, and as he walked out of the courtroom, he raised a fist and yelled, "Trump won." That's what happens still 3 years later.
Scott, those congressmen that you spoke with, some of them sit side by side with colleagues who, to this day, deny that it was as bad as it was. And with a quarter of Americans now polling saying that the FBI instigated January 6th, I'm curious where they all feel the misinformation is leading them.
It causes more friction, it causes more stalemates and bad relationships, and that's one of the reasons why we're facing the prospect of another government shutdown in 2 weeks.
Scott MacFarlane, great job. Thank you.